Hi, I'm Catherine. My parents once told me I was the practical one, the one who didn't need much. They gave my sister a penthouse and gave me a couch they picked up from the side of the road. I smiled. I stayed quiet. I told myself maybe it was just a misunderstanding, but then came the fake contracts, the drained accounts, and eventually, the moment I realized the couch wasn't the insult. It was the start of the plan. So I took their building. But what kind of family sets you up to lose? Just because you never asked for more? Graduation day should have felt like a victory lap, but it started with the kind of silence that made you wonder if you were really in the picture, or just filling a seat in someone else's story. I parked my car in front of my parents' house, still in my cap and gown, the air humid with that sticky Florida heat that never really goes away. I expected a quick hug, maybe a small card, even just a, "We're proud of you." Nothing extravagant, just something real. Instead, what greeted me was a sagging beige couch sitting crookedly on the driveway, the sun already baking its armrests. The stuffing peeked out at one corner like it was trying to escape. My mother stood by it, sipping iced tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Your dad picked this up this morning," she chirped. "Still good? You're not picky like Callista, right?" I blinked, unsure how to respond. Was this a joke? Was something better coming? But no, that was it. The gift. "It's sturdy," my dad added, walking by with a half-eaten burger. "Could last years if you take care of it." I nodded slowly, the way you do when you realize arguing would only embarrass you further. Maybe it was symbolic, I tried to tell myself. Maybe they meant it as a metaphor. Except metaphors don't smell like damp carpet and defeat. As I turned toward the house, I heard a voice from across the street. Mr. Farrell, the neighbor with a yard that always looked professionally manicured, waved. "Still finding treasures by the curb, huh?" He laughed, not unkindly, but not kindly either. I smiled back out of habit, my cheeks burning. The kind of burn that comes from realizing people see the joke before you even get the punchline. The couch stayed on display, right there at the edge of the driveway. No one moved it. No one tried to hide it. It sat like a silent, ugly guest, making sure every car that passed knew exactly how much I was worth in upholstery. Inside the house, the air conditioner hummed loudly, covering for the lack of words. I paused in the foyer and caught sight of a new photo book on the coffee table. Family Highlights. The title read in bold cursive. I flipped through it, each page a carefully crafted spread of birthdays, vacations, baby showers, holidays. Callista smiling on a beach. Callista holding a trophy. Callista with a birthday cake lit up like a bonfire. I appeared twice. One shot cropped me so tightly, I looked like a stranger photobombing. The other was blurred, like I had been moving too fast for them to focus. My mother glanced up from arranging fruit slices. "You're always busy or working. Hard to catch you." I looked her dead in the eye. "I lived here until I was 29. You just weren't looking." No answer. She turned back to the melon like it had more to say than I did. Then I saw it, right above the fireplace. A framed photo the size of a small television. Callista's graduation, her beaming smile frozen in time. Our parents on either side, arms wrapped around her like bookends. It looked expensive. It looked intentional. I asked where my own graduation photo was. Dad shrugged. "We figured you'd rather keep yours simple. You always said you didn't like fuss." I never said that. I walked down the hallway and opened the closet where they kept board games and old VHS tapes. My degrees were there, stacked under a Monopoly box, slightly bent. I stood still, letting it all settle. The couch, the book, the frame, the comments, the absence. This wasn't neglect. It was design. I thought back to soccer games where my name was never called, to spelling bees where I stood alone with a ribbon while the other parents clapped for their kids, to college letters pinned to the fridge, Callista's in the center, mine on the side under a coupon. People think pain comes from what's said, but sometimes it comes from the silence. The things not acknowledged, the birthdays skipped, the hugs withheld, the stories told without your name in them. I didn't yell. I didn't demand. That would have been giving them more than they gave me. Instead, I walked back outside, pulled out my phone, and snapped a photo of that couch. If that's how they chose to define me, fine. I'd let it sit, right there, pixel by pixel, reminder by reminder. Not because I needed the memory, but because I needed the clarity. It wasn't the couch that broke me. It was the way they smiled when they gave it. That thought kept looping in my mind as I drove through the downtown traffic. You don't need to flip the table. Sometimes you just buy the building it's standing on. It was a week after the couch, and I had been summoned to a family gathering in Brickell. The text from Mom said, "Callista's hosting something. Would be good if you came. Dress nice." That was it. No explanation. No mention of me. Still, I showed up. Because dignity doesn't always mean silence. Sometimes it means showing up and letting people watch you not flinch. The rooftop of Callista's new building was trimmed with white lights and gold accents. Servers in black carried trays of champagne flutes and tiny shrimp toasts. Jazz played from hidden speakers like the whole place had been dipped in expensive sound. As I stepped out of the elevator, a woman I didn't know handed me a branded welcome bag. Inside, a scented candle, a keychain that said "Breathe and Bloom," and a brochure with Callista's name at the top in gold foil. "Welcome to Penthouse 54. No one told me, not in the group chat, not over dinner the week before, not even as a casual aside. They had bought her a penthouse. Before I could ask anything, my father clinked his glass and cleared his throat. "We're here to celebrate a young woman stepping fully into her light. This penthouse represents independence, vision, and alignment. Callista, we're proud of the life you're building." There were cheers. Mom dabbed her eyes. Callista waved like a pageant queen, then whispered to me while adjusting her hair. "Don't be mad. Mom said this apartment suits my energy more." I smiled. That automatic, shallow curve of the lips you develop when people say things that make you want to scream into a pillow. Apparently, my energy belonged to curbside furniture. I stood near the edge, looking out over the Miami skyline, trying not to gag on my flat mimosa. Guests were taking selfies against the sunset. Callista was glowing, her dress probably custom, her makeup untouched by sweat despite the humidity. People came up to me, not to say hello, but to hand me their phones. "Could you get a shot of us with the skyline? Mind taking a few from this angle?" Mom handed me her phone and motioned toward the champagne tower. "Get me and Callista over there. It's a good backdrop." No one asked me to be in the frame, not once. I poured myself a drink, only to realize the chilled bottle was empty. The server didn't even notice me standing there. Dinner was served on long communal tables under a canopy of string lights. Vera stood to speak, of course. She had a speech folded neatly in her hand. "Callista," she began, "watching you grow into your grace has been one of the greatest joys of my life. Your compassion, your vision, your light, it lifts everyone in this family." She thanked Callista's business coach, her real estate agent, even the woman who did the floral arrangements. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I caught a glance from Uncle Greg, a subtle flinch. He noticed. They all did. But no one said a word. You can't scream when you're invisible. All you can do is watch. I sat through dessert, pushing pieces of lemon tart around my plate, and watched as my sister basked in applause that was never mine to receive. As the evening died down, I stood to leave. Vera handed me the gift bag again, as if I hadn't already received one at the door. "Take it," she said. "It's scented eucalyptus. Thought it would help you unwind. You've been so tense lately." I nodded, took the bag, and walked toward the elevator. But halfway there, I stopped, turned, and placed it gently back on the table. Not out of spite, out of clarity, downstairs, in the quiet of my car, I sat for a moment and stared up at the towering glass structure. A penthouse, bought like a trophy, gifted like a secret prize. And me, the invisible observer, still holding receipts no one thought to check. I whispered to myself, just loud enough to hear it echo inside the cabin. You don't need to flip the table. Sometimes, you just buy the building it's standing on. I didn't go straight home after the penthouse party. I drove around the city for over an hour with the air conditioner blasting and my radio on low, as if the quiet between songs would give me answers. The truth was, I didn't have a name for what I felt. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even anger. It was the kind of clarity that leaves a burn, not a bruise. 2 days later, I was back at my condo in North Miami, sitting cross-legged on the floor with my laptop balanced on a pillow. The glow from the screen lit up the only real furniture I had. The couch I bought with a credit card back when I first moved out. Not the one they gave me. That one? I left it on the street where it belonged. I opened a folder labeled Callista's Mortgage, a digital graveyard of old PDFs and forwarded emails I hadn't looked at in over a year. Something in me said it was time. That's when I saw it. An email from a broker. Subject line: Pre-approval details for investment property. Dated March of last year. Addressed to me. I stared at it, blinking twice. The pre-approval letter had my full name, my social, even the projected income from my other assets. I hadn't applied for anything that year. My parents had. Back then, Dad had mentioned some tax strategy stuff, but I didn't ask questions. He always talked in a tone that made you feel dumb for not understanding finances. I figured it was something benign. But now it made sense. They had used my financial profile to reduce their capital gains, funnel the benefit through Callista, and present it as her buying power. I sat back, heart knocking gently in my chest. If they'd asked, I might have said yes. But they knew better. Asking gives me the power to say no. My fingers moved faster than my brain. I searched for another file. This time, something Vera had handed me a year ago over dinner. She called it a quick glance thing, just a form she needed help reviewing. I signed it because she said it was for a small family investment property they were testing out. I found the PDF. My signature was there. Only now, at the top of the page, the beneficiary was listed as Callista Jameson. Not me. I leaned in, rereading it. My mother had handed me a document, told me it was one thing, and used it for another. I'd been turned into a co-signer, on a property I had no keys to, no knowledge of, no say in. They used me as a legal stepping stone, then erased me from the plaque. Suddenly, more moments clicked into place like a morbid puzzle. My student loan still in my name. The savings bond Grandma left for the girls, which somehow ended up only in Callista's possession. The family savings account I was told not to touch because we're planning something big. It wasn't an accident. It was a habit. I had been trained to say yes, trained not to question. But this time, they turned a habit into a strategy. I opened a new document titled Receipts. I started listing everything: names, dates, emails. I opened spreadsheets, color-coded files, backed everything up to 3 different clouds. I wasn't angry. I was awake. They thought I was still playing daughter, still playing dumb, still nodding through dinners and smiling through slights. But I had already started building something else. My own role. Not the supportive sibling, not the buffer, not the fallback plan. This time, I was writing the blueprint, and they'd given me the paper. By Friday, I'd categorized every document into folders labeled with dates, types of transactions, and people involved. I had tags like unauthorized use, financial proxy, and misrepresentation. When I stepped back and looked at it all together, it wasn't just a paper trail. It was a pattern with my name scrawled across the margins like a watermark I never agreed to. That weekend, Vera called. "Let's do a little mother-daughter time," she said. "Just something easy. Sit in the backyard, maybe catch up." I paused before responding. She had a way of calling things casual when she wanted something. I agreed anyway, not because I expected honesty, but because I needed to see how far she'd go. Sunday afternoon, I arrived at her house in Coral Gables. The hedges were too perfectly trimmed, the lemonade already poured, the chairs positioned just so. It was the kind of setup that looked candid if you didn't know how much she rehearsed appearances. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and a comment about how tired I looked. "Probably working too much," she said, handing me a glass. We sat. She made small talk about Callista's upcoming wellness launch, the humidity, some distant cousin's divorce. I listened, nodding, eyes scanning her face like I was reading a contract. "I've heard you've been looking at investment properties," she said after a lull. Her tone was light, but her eyes didn't blink. "I've been considering a small 4-unit, I said. "Something stable. I've got the plan mostly fleshed out. Just need a little push to cover initial costs." She leaned back, smiling. "Well, just email me the numbers," she said. "You've always been the smart one. I trust your judgment." It felt almost genuine. That night, I did email her. I included projections, property comparisons, and repayment plans. Clean, professional, respectful. The next morning, her reply came in at 6:12 a.m. A thumbs-up emoji. Nothing else. No, "Let me think about it." No, "Looks good." No, "Let's talk more." Just. It wasn't a no. It was worse. It was a way to end the conversation without even starting it. I didn't reply. I didn't follow up. I did, however, print the email and place it into a folder titled Passive Rejections. Later that same day, I received a call from Vera, asking if I could swing by again. "Just for a moment," she said. "There's something I'd like your eyes on." This time, we met inside, at the dining table. She had a manila envelope laid out like an offering. "I want you to read this," she said. "No pressure, of course. It's just a technicality." Inside was a pre-drafted waiver stating that I voluntarily released any claim to Grandma's estate, retroactive, with notarized sections left blank. "It's just to avoid future friction," she explained. "Callista's been under a lot of stress. We don't want any tension once things finalize." "Overwhelmed with what?" I asked. "Inheritance she hasn't earned?" Vera didn't answer. She just folded her hands and waited. I read every line, not because I planned to sign, but because I wanted to know exactly what they were comfortable asking me to forfeit. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push the paper back dramatically. I folded it neatly, placed it back into the envelope, and slid it across the table without a word. On the way out, she gave me a quick hug, one arm around my shoulders, the other texting someone behind my back. I caught the glow of her screen in the reflection of the hallway mirror. I didn't say anything, but I did write down the time, the date, and the subject line on the draft document. Jameson Estate, Conflict Prevention Letter. That wasn't a conversation. It was a test of how much I was still willing to give up just to keep being the daughter they could live with. That night, I added a new section to my folder system. Emotional leverage disguised as harmony. I wasn't documenting for memory anymore. I was documenting for protection. They're building an empire out of my silence. I'm about to become the loudest document they ever signed. 1 week later, I found myself circling their block like I had nowhere else to be. Maybe because I didn't. Not in the way that counted. The dinner invitation had come through text. 3 lines, no punctuation. Vera had called it a wedding logistics dinner, like we were colleagues on a shared project. That should have been my first clue. When I walked in, Callista was already seated at the table with a binder open, color-coded tabs peeking out like a child's school project. My parents sat side by side, calm, expectant. No greetings, no eye contact, just business. Vera cleared her throat. "We'll need your room for the bridal party, just for a few weeks. You'll understand." The way she said "we" hit me like a well-rehearsed chorus. Callista didn't even look up from her notes. "It'll be nice to have a space of our own. You're so independent anyway, right?" There was no preamble, no soft landing, just a verdict handed down in a dining room that once had my school projects taped to the wall. It was quiet after that, the kind of silence that comes when no one plans to let you speak. I turned to Vera. "So, when would you need me out?" "Oh, it's already in motion," she said, smiling faintly. Callista needed to know things were moving. We had to make space. I blinked. She tilted her head, almost apologetic. A moving service came earlier this afternoon. Everything's boxed. They were very careful with your things. I looked at my father. He reached for the salt shaker and muttered, "We figured this was the right time. You're not a kid anymore." They'd packed up my life and scheduled a truck without asking. My name had already been removed from the utility bills. I confirmed it later. The mail forwarding notice was dated 4 days ago. I wasn't being asked. I was being pushed. Gently, politely, completely. I stood up. My hands felt cold, but steady. I'll be out tonight. No one stopped me. No one said a word. Before I left, I turned back. One thing. Did it ever occur to you to just ask me? Vera folded her napkin like it was fragile. We raised you to be strong, not dependent. This is your moment to live that out. She paused, then added softly, "We didn't raise you to be an investment. You're not like Callista. She's more delicate." Delicate. That word echoed like a slap. Delicate gets the penthouse. Delicate gets the trust fund. Delicate gets the room. I walked out, not slamming the door, just closing it behind me like it was never mine to begin with. That night, I slept in my car. I parked 2 blocks away from the beach, where I used to ride bikes with Callista. The wind howled through a cracked window. My back ached. My pride didn't. At sunrise, I checked into a roadside motel, just off I-95. It smelled like lemon cleaner and loneliness. I handed over my emergency credit card and took the key with a blank nod. I laid on the stiff mattress and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't homeless. I was houseless, and suddenly, painfully free. Later that morning, I unpacked my laptop and opened the file I had labeled Reclaim. It was still empty, but I knew what would fill it, slowly, carefully, with intent. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I started with a title page, because sometimes they move you out. Now, I'll move them off the pedestal they built on my back. The next morning, I sat at the edge of the motel bed, a styrofoam cup of burnt coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, waiting for the bank to answer. I'd requested a change of mailing address. It was standard, routine, a quiet form of moving on. I expected no surprises, just a sigh of relief when it was done. But the voice on the other end hesitated. "Ms. Jameson, there was a withdrawal from your emergency account last week. It cleared the balance entirely." I gripped the cup tighter. "I didn't authorize that." There was a pause, clicking keys. Then, "It was done in person, signed for by Vera Jameson. She said you were traveling and had given consent." The room dimmed, even though the sun was coming through the blinds. I could hear the sound of kids in the parking lot below, laughing, one of them bouncing a basketball off the hood of a car. But in that moment, everything else was noise. "She's had access since the account was opened," the clerk continued. "It wasn't flagged." The flag wasn't red. It was invisible, just like I've always been. I ended the call and stared at the screen. She hadn't even asked. Just walked into a bank, claimed my words, and signed away my savings. I scrolled through my messages, searching for distraction, something numb. But instead, another blow hit. A notification from my credit monitoring app. A rejection. Business line of credit. Declined. That didn't make sense. I hadn't submitted anything yet. Curious now, I clicked through to the details. There it was, an application tied to my tax ID. Recent. For a spa-based operation. Address listed, my previous consulting office, a location I hadn't used in over a year. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from Callista. "Hey Kat, just FYI. I used your old office address for a loan app. Wasn't sure it'd go through, but it's no big deal. You weren't even using it." I stared at the screen like it might rewrite itself. No big deal. She'd used my identity, again. Not to help me, not even to ask, but because it was convenient. And in her world, convenience always came before consent. I could have called. I could have screamed. But instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up a blank document, and began drafting a formal complaint. This time, it didn't go to drafts. This time, I clicked send. They always assumed I wouldn't fight because I didn't scream. But I've learned, signatures speak louder than voices. I spent the next several hours closing everything with my name on it. Bank authorizations, shared services, old logins Vera had once helped me create, everything she'd ever been just in case on. I even changed the password to the digital storage account I used for family archives. If they wanted history, they could start making their own. By late afternoon, I stood outside the wellness spa Callista had opened a year ago. I didn't walk in. I didn't need to. I watched a woman exit, early 30s, expensive bag, perfect posture, and I wondered how many people had walked through those doors believing in the brand, the name, the curated facade. How many had no idea the foundation was built on someone else's paperwork? I turned away and walked back to my car. Before dinner, I logged into my legal document service and opened a new file. Revocation of access. I added a second one. Unauthorized use case. Pending review. Then I began transferring funds into newly created accounts, ones with no shared names, no old addresses, no sentimental ties. They stole my silence and turned it into paperwork. Now, I'll steal their comfort and turn it into proof. By Tuesday morning, the buzz had found me. It started with a LinkedIn message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, an old colleague from my first job out of grad school. "I thought you were more professional than to sabotage your sister's spa launch," it read. I blinked, reread it, then clicked their profile. Nothing recent, nothing personal. Just that one line. I let it sit there on my screen as the sting crept in, not from their words, but from the fact that someone, somewhere, believed them. The damage wasn't loud. It was strategic, surgical. I opened my browser and typed in Callista's spa name. It took less than a minute to find it. A vague Instagram post, captioned in that airy, faux enlightened tone she was so good at. Sometimes those closest to us don't support our journey, and that's okay. Growth is messy. I'm grateful for those who stood by me through sabotage and silence. No names, no tags. But she didn't need to. The comments filled in the blanks for her. Then came the screenshots, circulating in small business groups, private wellness forums. A thread of messages supposedly written by me. Negative reviews, sarcastic comments, even a fake email implying I leaked client information to a competitor. All complete fabrications. The tone wasn't even mine. The grammar was sloppy. But the timestamps looked real. She didn't scream my name. She just left enough breadcrumbs for everyone to guess. For the rest of the afternoon, I didn't reply to anything. I didn't defend myself. I didn't chase whispers. Instead, I printed every post. I logged the URLs. I archived each comment, screenshotting down to the second. I copied metadata from every digital trace I could find. Then I forwarded it all to my legal advisor. And quietly, I updated my LinkedIn bio. Founder, advisor, never someone's scapegoat. I didn't care who saw it. I just needed it there. My version of a line drawn in permanent ink. That evening, I returned to my co-working space to handle real work. Contracts, consultation requests, spreadsheets that actually mattered. But halfway through a budget review, a notification popped up on my phone. New rent adjustment notice from the property management system. I opened it. The number had jumped nearly 40%. No call, no email. Just an invoice. Market adjustment effective immediately. The property, of course, was owned by the family trust. The same one Vera used to lecture us about over Thanksgiving dinners. The one she claimed would benefit both girls equally. Not 15 minutes later, I saw a post on her Facebook page. A glossy image of Callista with a ribbon cutting at her second wellness center. Vera's caption read, "Proud doesn't begin to cover it. Our daughter is redefining care in this community." Our daughter. But only when there were cameras. I sat back in my chair, let the silence fill the room. No tears. Just an alertness that had become second nature by now. They weren't cutting me off quietly anymore. They were funding Callista's empire with a smirk. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't write a think piece. I opened a browser tab and searched public property records. It took 2 days. 2 silent, deliberate days. But eventually, I found what I needed. Through a third-party LLC, I began filing soft offers. Nothing direct, nothing dramatic. Just movement. Quiet, like shadows shifting beneath their feet. They play public games. But my silence has always been my strategy. And my counterattack? Timed. Legal. Permanent. Late Thursday evening, as I was reviewing documentation for the LLC filing, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject line: Emergency Loan Request Notification, SPA Collective Holdings. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at it, letting the subject settle like dust across the top of my thoughts. They built her kingdom on my foundation. Now I'll watch it collapse, one legal footnote at a time. I opened the email just after sunrise. Not out of curiosity, but strategy. There's something about reading betrayal in daylight. It dulls the sting. Vera's name was right there in the CC field, along with Callista's, and 3 investors I didn't recognize. The subject line was bland. SPA Collective Q2 Investor Review? But the content? She's not going to fight. She never has, Vera had written. Keep pushing. The SPA can't afford any drama from her now. And attached, my private application records. Forwarded, highlighted, annotated, used like a talking point in a pitch I wasn't invited to. They didn't just doubt I'd speak. They counted on it. I didn't respond. Not then. I closed the laptop and opened a different file. One I'd been quietly building for months. It had no title, just a time-stamped folder. 2 days later, Callista posted a video, shot from the penthouse balcony. The camera panned across the skyline, then to her face, smiling, hair styled within an inch of its life. Feels powerful living over the person who always looked up to me, she said, voice light, mocking. The clip spread fast. Comments flared. Some praised her confidence. Others called it tone-deaf. I downloaded it, saved it, archived the reactions, then said nothing, because my moment wasn't a reply. It was a room. The following Friday, I rented a conference space downtown. Quiet, unassuming. I sent calendar invites to 6 people, family friends, 2 local reporters I trusted, and the real estate developer who once joked that I'd make a better lawyer than a consultant. They came. No questions asked. I didn't give a speech. I didn't lay out a timeline on a whiteboard. I handed out folders. Inside, the name misuse, the identity theft filings, the credit impact reports, a notarized copy of my ownership in Brickell Holdings, the forwarded email from Vara, the SPA loan application fraud, the clip from the balcony. It was clinical, tidy, inarguable. Someone asked if I was planning to sue. I said no. They asked if I'd gone public. I said, not yet. I didn't need applause. I needed record. The following week, Callista's SPA was flagged for review by their primary lender. Her expansion stalled. One of her business partners stepped down quietly. Their website went into maintenance mode. And I updated my company's homepage. Just one sentence under my photo. Verified owner of Brickell Holdings. No hashtags, no announcement. Just the truth, presented plainly. Something they had never been able to do. Later that month, I was invited to a charity gala. The kind Vera always attended with a perfectly timed donation and Callista in tow. I walked in wearing a navy suit. No jewelry, no theatrics. Just presence. Callista spotted me first. Her face shifted through 3 expressions in 5 seconds. Surprise, dismissal, then that smile she used when cameras were nearby. She approached. Catherine, you look so corporate. I didn't answer, just reached into my bag and handed Vera a sealed envelope. She took it without looking inside. She knew what it meant. For once, I didn't have to explain myself. Their silence would do that for me. 2 weeks passed. The envelope I handed Vera had done its job, not with a bang, but with a slow, deliberate hum that echoed behind every silence in our family. The kind of hum that pulls at nerves people didn't even know they had. I didn't hear from her, not directly, but the ripple effect started showing. The local press ran a quiet piece buried in the business section. Wellness Empire faces internal review. No quotes, no blame, just questions. Investors, once proud to name-drop Callista at brunches and chamber events, started shifting language. She's reevaluating, stepping back, refining her brand. Her Instagram slowed. Posts grew sparse. Captions turned vague. The smiles stayed, forced, glassy. But the sponsors and the tags disappeared, like they'd never been there. Then, one morning, my inbox dinged with a familiar name. Orlin, Grandma's old lawyer. The man with a handshake like fine leather and a memory sharper than anyone half his age. Subject line, for your eyes only. I opened the attachment and hit play. My grandmother's voice filled the room, steady, tired, but clear. If you're hearing this, then I'm gone. And I want what I leave behind to go where it was always meant. To the one who didn't ask for anything but showed up anyway. Groceries over gossip, kindness over credit. Catherine, everything I have, everything left, goes to you. I played it twice more. Not for joy, for clarity, for truth in her tone. There'd been a time, just months after she passed, when Vera showed me a revised will. Neatly typed, polished, my name notably absent. She'd said it was to avoid complications with Callista's finances. I'd nodded, said nothing. Because by then, I'd already learned silence was easier than suspicion. But now, hearing Grandma again, I knew. They rewrote history before the ground cooled under her grave. I scheduled a meeting with Orlin. His office hadn't changed in 20 years. Still smelled like cedar and ink and old justice. He poured me a cup of tea without asking. She recorded that a year before she passed, he said. Sent it to me in a sealed envelope. Said not to use it unless someone tried to erase you. I looked at him. And they did. He nodded. They always do when the truth is inconvenient. I asked him what it meant legally. Simple, he said. The last draft they used wasn't finalized. Technically, the audio holds. And it carries intent. You have every right to file for correction. I didn't sue. Not yet. I filed for amendment. Quiet. Clean. A request to reinstate the will's original intention. A reroute of assets still stuck in probate. Then I mailed Vera and Callista a certified letter. 1 sentence. The voice you silenced has now spoken, and it wasn't mine. I didn't wait for their reply. I walked into my new office that afternoon. The nameplate on the door read Catherine, Managing Partner. I placed Grandma's photo on the shelf, right next to a folder marked Estate Reinstatement, Initiated. No drama, no declaration, just direction. Because legacy isn't inherited, it's remembered and then reclaimed. 3 weeks passed, and like anything that simmers long enough, the fallout began quietly. Not with confrontation, not with apology, just with absence. Callista's name stopped appearing in event invites. Her brand's social pages went dormant. No updates, no launches, no behind-the-scenes glimpses of healing spaces or self-growth journeys. The photos stayed, polished and smiling, but the comments faded. The noise was gone. Then came the letter, delivered by courier, addressed in formal type. Notice of pending audit, Spa Collective Holdings. City issued. I didn't send it. I didn't need to. My name wasn't on it, but my fingerprints were in the cracks of every lie she told. I read it once, folded it back into its envelope, and placed it at the bottom of a drawer. I was done explaining. The truth had momentum now, and I didn't need to chase it anymore. The week before Christmas, I finalized the deed paperwork. The building, hers, mine, ours, now mine, was officially under my company's sole ownership. The legal jargon was heavy, but the signature felt light. No announcement, no social post. Just 2 words added to a document. Completed transfer. I walked into the Brickell Tower lobby the next morning. The front desk had a new concierge. They greeted me by name. On my way to the elevator, I spotted Callista across the marble floor. She didn't see me at first. She was speaking to someone, animated, a little too loud, laughing at something that didn't seem funny. She turned just as the elevator doors opened. Our eyes met. Her smile flickered. She didn't stop talking, but she adjusted her tone, smoothed her hair, stood taller. She didn't know the building belonged to me now, and I wasn't going to tell her. Let them keep thinking they're above me. It's easier to move the ground they stand on. That Christmas, I arrived at the annual family brunch 15 minutes late. I wore a navy sweater, no jewelry. Callista wore red silk and teeth. Vera greeted me like I was an uninvited neighbor. "Didn't expect to see you," she said. "You've been distant." I poured myself coffee and smiled. "No more than usual." We sat, we passed food, we made polite noises about the weather. Then, near the end of the meal, Vera turned to me. "Any updates on your ventures?" The way she said it, soft but sharp. A blade wrapped in tinsel. I reached into my bag and handed her an envelope. This one, printed on official letterhead, bore the seal of my firm. Inside, a notarized transfer of power for the board of directors that governed the building housing Callista's spa, her penthouse, and Vera's favorite lunch spot. Callista frowned. "What even is this?" I sipped my coffee. "It's just my seat at the table, in legal form." I stood, thanked them for brunch, and left before dessert. 2 days later, the messages started. Not from them. From neighbors. From old family friends. From people who'd watched the show long enough to know when the curtains finally dropped. "You didn't humiliate them," one wrote. "You just made the silence echo loud enough." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I went to the top floor of my building that weekend. The sun was setting. The sky was pink, and the air smelled like the sea. I unlocked the corner suite, the new headquarters of my firm. Inside, the lobby was quiet, clean, and in the center sat the couch, the one they left on the curb, the one they said was good enough for me. I had it cleaned, reupholstered in soft charcoal gray, not because it was valuable, but because I decided it was. They handed me trash. I turned it into foundation. Now they walk on it every day and never look down. The air in my new office carried that faint mix of paper, polish, and peace. The kind of calm that comes not from silence, but from no longer needing to be heard. I sat behind my desk, fingers tracing the edge of a ledger too old for the room it now lived in. It arrived in a plain envelope. No tracking number, no email alert. Just a thin, handwritten note tucked inside. For the one who remembered to visit. Grandma's handwriting. I would have known it blindfolded. Attached was the original bank ledger, a trust account she'd opened years ago. Set to mature once I turned 35. It wasn't an empire, but it was enough to seed something real. Enough to sustain another layer of growth for my company. Enough to know that someone had seen me when I thought I was invisible. I folded the note and placed it on my bookshelf. Next to it, the framed photo of her sitting in that old lawn chair, the one she never let anyone throw away. "Things with roots shouldn't be tossed so easily," she used to say. Later that afternoon, I took a walk through the neighborhood where I grew up. Spring had just begun to nudge the trees into bloom. Kids were chalking uneven hopscotch grids across sidewalks. A dog barked behind a fence that used to be ours. Vera's house looked smaller somehow. The garden she used to obsess over had overgrown in places. No ribbons on the gate, no catered vans out front, no sign of Callista. She hadn't posted in weeks. I passed the corner where Grandma used to sit on warm evenings, shelling pecans and telling stories that had more truth than most books. That's where I saw Mr. Hendricks, the retired history teacher who still wore bow ties even in his yard. He looked up from pruning his hedges and smiled. "Your grandmother would be proud, you know. She always said you had the still fire. I nodded. I finally understand what she meant. The next morning, I returned to the office early, pulled out the checkbook I rarely used, and wrote a donation, not to a foundation that would stamp my name on a plaque, but to a small community scholarship fund. I named it the Still Fire Award, in memory of Ruth Jameson. I placed the stub next to the ledger, proof that inheritance isn't just what you receive, but what you're trusted to carry forward. Midweek, Vera showed up, unannounced, alone. She stepped into the office like she still had a key to everything. Her eyes swept the room, resting briefly on Grandma's photo, then the couch, the same one they left on the curb. She didn't sit, just stood by the door. "I thought you'd end up bitter," she said, "but you're just done." I looked up, calm. "I'm not bitter, Mom. I'm busy." She didn't reply, just nodded, lingered for a beat too long, then left. That evening, back at home, I opened an email draft I'd written weeks ago, addressed to Callista. It read, "I forgive you, but I don't trust you." I hovered over the send button. Then I deleted it. Forgiveness is for me. Distance is for you. Spring had crept in quietly, the way it does in Miami. Less a season, more a change in the way the light moves through the blinds. I stepped into the lobby of my firm just before the anniversary event was set to begin. The team had transformed the space with white lilies and quiet jazz. Nothing ostentatious, just clean lines and pride in small things. In the center, as always, sat the couch. It had become a symbol now. Clients pointed it out. Interns asked about it. It had its own story. No plaque, no glass box. Just presence. A new intern, maybe 19, stood nearby with a clipboard. She glanced from the couch to me, unsure if she could ask. "Why keep something so beat up?" she said finally, careful not to sound rude. I smiled, ran my hand along the armrest. Because they said I was worth this. And now, I decide what's worth keeping. Upstairs, the rooftop garden buzzed softly. The sun had started its slow descent, casting long shadows over concrete and green. I stood by the railing, waiting for the room to settle before saying anything. "I won't keep you long," I began. "You came here to celebrate, not to sit through speeches." A few chuckles. I held up a photo of the couch from the day I got it. Torn, sun-faded, sitting alone on a driveway. "No names, no blame," I said. "Just the truth. Some people are handed legacies. Others are handed leftovers. What you build from them, that's your true inheritance." There were no applause cues, just quiet understanding. Later that week, I walked into the county clerk's office for what I hoped would be the final time in this story. Not to claim land, not to defend a title. This visit was personal. I filed a transfer form, naming the scholarship fund. It was official now, the Still Fire Award, in memory of Ruth Jameson. As the clerk processed the documents, he looked up. "You're the one who owned the Penthouse building, right?" I smiled. "And everything under it." He nodded, handed me the stamped copy, and wished me luck. I tucked the paper into my bag and walked out without looking back. I heard through the grapevine that Callista's spa was sold in pieces. Silent transactions, no headlines. Vera's name no longer appeared on business licenses or donor walls. There were no arguments, no requests, just an emptying out, quiet as their exit had always been. They thought the silence was compliance, but it was preparation. Back at the office, I sat in my executive lounge, the couch beneath me solid and still. I cradled a coffee mug that read, "Built, not given." A young woman waited outside my door for an internship interview. Her resume mentioned night school. She had listed a side hustle doing social media for her aunt's laundromat. She reminded me of someone I used to be. I glanced at the clock, stood, and opened the door. "Ready?" I asked. She nodded. I offered her a seat, not behind the desk, not across from it, but right there on the couch. I don't need them to say sorry. I just need to keep making sure no one else feels invisible on their own couch. Not all homes are built with walls. Some are built with memory, and finally, mine is furnished.